Okay. Thank you all for coming. They've asked me to introduce myself. As you probably guessed, my name is Gar Alperovitz. I'm a professor of political economy at the University of Maryland, and I write books, but I'm trained as a historian and a political economist. Background, I was, I did a PhD at Cambridge University. I was a fellow of King's College, Cambridge, and fellow of the Institute for Politics at Harvard. And then I became much more interested in doing activist work along with my writing, and so I moved to Washington. We're in Wisconsin now. I'm a Wisconsin native, went to the university here at Madison, and I was also legislative director for Gaylord Nelson, the great senator from Wisconsin, and Bob Kastenmeier, who was a very liberal congressman. And so the last bit of introduction, I did policy planning work on United Nations matter at the State Department. So I have a checkered career. I come out of both politics and history and economics and different universities. And I've written this book. First, I should say I'm really pleased to be at this. This is a famous institution. The small bookstores like this, in my view, are the future and backbone of America. I've been lecturing around the country at MIT and Duke and NYU and Columbia. The real places where things happen are places like this, and so it's really a pleasure to be here. So this book, What Then Must We Do? The title is taken from Tolstoy, and it is drawn from Luke 4:10. That's where he got it. Probably, we don't know, but that's where it comes. And I stole his title because I thought it was appropriate to the question of the difficulties facing the country. What is it we shall do? What then must we do? And that's a question a lot of people are asking themselves around the country, and particularly. And I wrote this book in a very strange way. As some of you know, I wrote a very long book about the atomic bomb, about 700 pages of scholarly work, and other books that are very scholarly. And my wife teases me. She says, how long is this book going to take you? 5 years, 10 years, that kind of thing. And I've been working on what became the basis of this book for a long time, several years, maybe 5, 10 years, something like that. But I wrote this particular book in something that had never happened to me before. I wrote it in 3.5 months. It just poured out. And I decided to do it partly because of the mood that's developing in the country, and because younger people particularly are beginning to get into action. Occupy was one symbol of it, but a lot of other things are going on around the country that I've been involved with, and it seemed now's the time to speak to the possibility of change and activity and what's beginning to happen. So, and I also decided to write it in a style that I've never written before. It's very, very common sense vernacular. It's like having a conversation, even a few jokes on the side. It's very fast-paced, but it's based upon heavy research, and if you look at the endnotes, you're going to find it. So that's enough background. Let me tell you what the book's about, and then we'll probably do some back and forth discussion on it. The first argument of the book is a kind of straightforward argument that most people don't often take seriously, but I think it's time to take seriously. Now, I told you I come out of conventional politics. I've worked in legislation, House, Senate, the government, so forth, and I left during the Vietnam War, so that period is over. But I come out of straight politics. I've done politics. I've been there, done that. And the first argument of the book is that the problems that are growing up in this country are not, strictly speaking, political problems. Now, they are political problems. But a better way to understand them, and this is the first argument, is that we are facing a systemic crisis, not simply a political crisis. Now, what does that mean? One thing it means is that if you elect the next guy, he's probably not going to be able to do much, even if we try to build a movement to shift it a little bit, and I'm for building a movement. Another way to look at what a systemic crisis is, and we will get to what then must be done if politics doesn't move the ball. Another way to look at it is long trends that don't change but get worse over time tell you you're dealing with something deeper down in the system than just what one election will do. So, for instance, the distribution of income has been getting steadily worse for 30 years. It's not about whether the Congress right now is blockaded and if there's a Tea Party. That certainly is a problem. but a 30-year trend doesn't tells you something else is going on much deeper. Or for instance, virtually all of the economic gains, give or take small amounts, for the last 30 years, you really have to think about this, virtually all of the gains of the entire mammoth American economic system, virtually all, give or take, have gone to the top 1%. That's an extraordinary change. And we could get into criticizing the top 1%, but much more interesting is what is it in the system that generates long, long trends of that kind? So that's another one. There's been virtually very marginal increase in average worker pay. A little bit over 30 years, but maybe less than $1 over time. So this same long trends of decay there. Poverty has gotten worse, not better, over this period of time. And if we use about 14.5 to 16% range, if you used standards that are common in Europe or any other country in the world, poverty would be twice as high as it is in the United States. We use a very artificial standard of poverty, which was invented oddly by a government bureaucrat named Molly Orshansky, who picked up how much food in I think it was the late 50s, takes a food budget of a poor family multiplied by 3. No reason to multiply by 3. She just multiplied by 3, and that's the poverty line, increased by inflation. Most parts of the world, poverty is defined as half of the median income. Half of the median's the middle point in poverty. And by the world standard, we're double. And it says increased, not decreased over time. So these are some of the kind of trend data that tell you that something's going on deeper down in the economic system and in the political system than you can tell by simply an election here or there. Oh, take another one. CO2 production has gone up steadily, 20%, 30% over the last X years. Civil liberties have gone down over time. Imprisonment, if you're interested in the value of liberty, imprisonment per 100,000 people in the United States is higher than any other advanced country by 8-fold. 8 times, and 7 to 8, depends which country, including Russia and including China. And it has steadily gotten worse. So those are just some of the introductory things that make you say, we've been electing Democrats, Republicans, something deeper in the system is driving the long trends. We face a systemic crisis. You've got to change the system if you want to change the trends. And that's the problem we face. And then, of course, the question is, what then is to be done? Because that is an overwhelming challenge to almost anybody who thinks about it in any serious way. So the first part of the book lays that out and tries to explain some of the reasons why that's so. One part of that, and it's important, particularly in Wisconsin, where you know the problem because of the difficulties you've had in terms of labor here, in the fight with Walker and the fights gone on over unions and public unions and so forth. Traditionally, the solution to economic and political problems in Wisconsin or in the United States in the last 50 years, and in Europe in the last 50 years, has been, in Europe they call it social democracy. In the United States we call it liberalism or progressives. So the way the process works is very simple. You structure the economy and give over ownership of large amounts of capital. You structure it to the corporations. They get to own the capital, and the elites get to own the capital. That's the nature of the economic system. And then when there are difficulties, on inequality, problems with getting enough resources for public purposes, environmental difficulties, when there are difficulties, I'm going to let folks sit down as more are coming in. Come on in, sit down, and we'll carry on. Please come in. There's a chair. So the way the system is designed and the way the politics of the system is designed is that, and systems are about who gets to own the capital, who gets to own the wealth. The corporations and tiny elites in the United States and in most advanced capitalist systems own the large corporate productive part of the economy. Now they give or take, but by and large that, well, let me give you a number. This number is so staggering that you have to just kind of let it sit there in your lap for a minute and look at it. In the United States today,